3 months before our wedding, life felt impossibly serene. The venue was booked, the caterer had sent the final invoice, and the photographer's confirmation sat neatly on the kitchen counter. Tina and I had fallen into a quiet rhythm of planning, choosing flower arrangements, refining seating charts, and debating honeymoon trails in Iceland. I sat on the couch, laptop on my knees, cross-referencing maps for our hiking itinerary, while she flipped through a thick bridal magazine, seemingly absorbed in the glossy pages. It was a kind of silence that felt comfortable, almost sacred, the silence of two people utterly at ease in each other's presence. Or so I thought. When I finally looked up at her, something fell off. Her thumb tapped nervously against the magazine, her jaw clenched, and her eyes stared past the words without ever moving. The tension in her posture was subtle, but unmistakable, like the air just before a storm. I joked about trimming the chocolate fountain from the budget to lighten the mood, but she didn't smile. Instead, she closed the magazine sharply, and with a voice that trembled only slightly with control, said, "We need to talk about us, about everything." In that instant, the calm I had taken for granted began to crack. I froze, my heart tightening as she spoke. "It's not the wedding or the money," Tina began, her voice steady yet edged with something I couldn't quite place. "It's foundational." The word hung in the air, like a bell tolling an invisible alarm. I blinked, trying to grasp its meaning, and she pressed on, each word carefully measured. She told me she had serious doubts not about us, but about herself. She had never dated anyone else, never experienced the world beyond the confines of our relationship. She wondered if she was settling without realizing it, if someone out there might be a better fit. She needed to know, she explained, that I was truly the right choice. To do that, she had to experience other men, explore, date, and gain certainty through comparison. Her reasoning was logical, almost clinical, as though she were presenting a business case rather than a request that would shatter everything we had built. "If I don't do this," she said softly, "I'll always wonder. And I can't marry you with doubt hanging over me. I need certainty, true certainty." I felt a cold wave roll over me, a mixture of disbelief and betrayal. This wasn't a discussion about love. It was a test, a challenge, a conditional audition for my own worth. She offered it as a gift, a way to strengthen our future. But as I stared at her, the truth was undeniable. The life I had imagined, the wedding, the home, the shared dreams, they were suddenly no longer ours. Her ultimatum was clear: accept her terms or the wedding was over. I sank back into the couch, the weight of her words pressing down like a physical force. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. This wasn't uncertainty about love. This wasn't a fleeting fear. This was a demand, a calculation, a conditional judgment on my worth. The Tina I had known, the woman I had trusted, laughed with, planned a life that was gone, replaced by someone unrecognizable, someone who viewed me as an option on a menu, to be measured against strangers I had never met. A strange clarity washed over me, cold and precise. I realized in that moment that my love had been unconditional, patient, and steady, but hers was not. It had been contingent, experimental, self-serving. The life we had built together, the plans, the shared dreams, were suddenly optional in her eyes, dependent on her whims and curiosities. And yet, with that clarity came power. The decision was mine. I could continue to be a contestant in her arbitrary game, hoping to win the title of right choice, or I could walk away, reclaiming my life and dignity. I chose myself. For the first time, I understood that my value wasn't determined by her approval. The person she was asking me to be a backup, a placeholder, a test was no longer acceptable. The path ahead was mine alone to define. The decision had been made, but action was required. I moved deliberately, methodically, as if each motion could sever the invisible chains tying me to a life that no longer belonged to me. I silenced my phone, ensuring there would be no interruptions, no desperate calls or messages pulling me back. I packed a single duffel bag with only the essentials: clothes, toiletries, my passport, and documents that belonged unequivocally to me. Everything that reminded me of her. Our photos, shared gifts, sentimental tokens remained behind. I left the engagement ring last, The culmination of months of planning and careful saving. Standing at the jeweler's counter, I placed the velvet box down with precise calm. There was no drama, no tearful speech, just a quiet, firm statement. The engagement was over. The man who had helped me choose the ring nodded solemnly, his eyes reflecting the weight of what had been lost and the freedom I was reclaiming. Back at the apartment, I systematically canceled the wedding venue, caterer, photographer, florist, citing a family tragedy without hesitation or regret. Each call was precise, unemotional, a surgical removal of every connection to the life Tina and I had envisioned together. When I finally left, the apartment key rested on the counter, a final act of closure. I closed the door behind me and didn't look back. The silence that followed wasn't emptiness, it was liberation. For the first time in years, my life was mine, unshared, untested, unconditionally mine. The first week of my new studio was defined by a silence, so complete it almost had weight. No phone notifications, no reminders of shared routines, no expectations to meet. Just me, the hum of the mini fridge, the faint rush of water in the shower, and the blank walls of space that belonged entirely to me. At first, the emptiness was disorienting, almost uncomfortable, but slowly it became restorative. I slept deeply. Dreamless hours I hadn't known I was missing, waking to the quiet morning light filtering through the blinds. I cooked meals I wanted, experimented with flavors Tina would have dismissed, and allowed myself to be messy, imperfect, and entirely human. I began running along the river, feeling my lungs burn, my muscles ache, and then, paradoxically, my mind clear. Every step was a meditation, a reclaiming of territory that had been lost in the 5 years of planning, accommodating, and constantly managing another person's needs. I reconnected with friends, not out of desperation for validation, but for genuine camaraderie. I poured energy into work that had stagnated, surprising myself with the focus and creativity I'd thought lost. My apartment slowly filled with small signs of life, a thriving orchid on the windowsill, books stacked carelessly on the table, a renewed sense of ownership over time, space, and attention. In that silence, I realized something profound. Freedom wasn't just the absence of her, it was the presence of myself. The clarity and peace I felt weren't rewards. They were the natural consequence of choosing me first. After a few weeks of silence, curiosity finally nudged me, not longing, not regret, but detached observation. I unblocked Tina's number, not to respond, but to see the aftermath of her own choices. Immediately, my phone erupted with missed calls, messages, and voicemails a torrent of panic, confusion, and desperation. The text unfolded like a timeline of predictable stages. First came anger, accusations, demands, and disbelief. Why had I blocked her? Why was I abandoning what we had built? Then came bargaining, attempts to recast her ultimatum as an innocent, understandable need for reassurance. The words revealed everything. She had underestimated her own inability to find satisfaction elsewhere, and now she was scrambling to regain what she had carelessly put at risk. Finally, desperation set in. Late-night messages filled with rambling pleas, self-justifications, an increasingly obvious reality that the experiences she sought had not brought clarity or joy, they had only revealed the emptiness beneath her demands. I didn't respond. I watched, clinically, as the consequences of her actions played out. The Tina who had demanded I prove my worth against strangers was crumbling, exposed, and frantic. And in that observation, I found an unexpected affirmation. My decision to step away had been the only rational, healthy choice. Freedom, after all, is never wasted on those who choose to test it against cruelty. Months later, I attended a small art gallery opening with friends, stepping into a world that felt vibrant, alive, and entirely mine. The room buzzed with conversations and clinking glasses, but it was empty of expectation. That's when I saw her Tina across the gallery. She was with a friend, but her presence was muted, her posture slightly hunched, her energy dimmed. The experiences she had sought hadn't filled her. They had eroded something essential. Our eyes met. Recognition sparked across her face, a flicker of hope and panic, as if she had finally realized what she had lost. She whispered something to her friend and started toward me. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't invite her in. My peace was portable now, integrated into who I had become. She stopped a few feet away, searching my face as though looking for a hint of the old Daniel, the one who would bend, forgive, or beg. But I stood steady, composed, unshakable. "I've changed," she said, her voice small, almost pleading. I offered a calm, polite smile. "So have I replied. No more words were needed. My life, rebuilt and whole, was a silent declaration. I was no longer a part of her experiment. I was free, and that freedom was absolute. The gallery encounter left no ripples in me, only a quiet affirmation of the life I had reclaimed. In the weeks that followed, I built routines, relationships, and experiences that existed solely for me. I ran longer, read more, and allowed myself small pleasures I had once ignored. Cooking elaborate meals just because I could, cultivating my orchid, and spending evenings lost in music or books. Work became a space of growth, not obligation. Projects I had neglected for years now flourished under my focus and creativity. Promotions, recognition, and genuine satisfaction followed naturally. Rewards of attention turned inward rather than outward. I realized that freedom was not just the absence of Tina, it was the presence of myself, fully realized, unconditioned, and untethered. When her name or number appeared in any form, I no longer reacted. There was no longing, no pain, no curiosity about what could have been. That life had ended. A new one had begun. I had learned that certainty doesn't come from others. It comes from knowing your worth and living it every day. And in that knowledge, I found the truest, deepest peace. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, whole and unapologetically me.